Megan, welcome to the Completely Unreasonable Tour.
Love it.
It's been a long time coming,
For sure, for sure. Thanks for having me on, both of you.
for sure.
Yeah.
You and I have connected on and off here for the last almost probably a year and a half, year.
Yeah, I think we're definitely a year and a half in.
Yeah. And so, one on air or whatever you call this, I want to tell you thank you. I appreciate you. You happen to text me at the right moments almost always. So,
Appreciate you too.
um, but with that being said, before we get into it, I want you to give a little short background and anything else you want to say or add before we get into the festivities.
Um, yeah, just short background hail from the great state of North Carolina of the vintage year of '84. Yeah,
Okie. It's an Okie year. It's a good year.
it's a great year. It was the most gold medals till it wasn't. The I went to college as a thrower, was an athlete. I've kind of been an athlete or in and around performance my whole life. So that's been a non-negotiable in some way in my life, has been around performance. And then I decided to keep that going after an athlete as a coach. And I've been a coach for almost 15 years now, specifically in sport, always team side, whether it was university or professional, both men's and women's. And um, now live in Seattle, Washington, and enjoying a little cold air and cold rain today, which was awesome because it's been a minute, so it's good to be reminded it's coming. Uh, I have an amazing dog. I have an amazing life. Super blessed to have what I've worked so hard for, and couldn't be more excited to talk more about it with you all.
Awesome. Well, I know a good amount about your story, but what I wanted to start with is something that we try to start with every guest that we have on here. And so, usually there's an inciting event or a thing that leads people into whatever their version of an unreasonable life is. And so, what I would like is if you can take a second and kind of either walk us through that event or an event in your life that's kind of led you. I mean, they all led you here, but one that sticks out in your mind.
I mean, for sure. I think that I first of all love the book. You probably both know it, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like, even though my story is
Yeah.
unique, it's not unique. There's aspects of my story that every person, someone else in this world has walked in that path. It's only all the steps together make my unique path. So the reason I share my story is hopefully it resonates to different parts with different people. Because my purpose on this earth is to connect, empower, and inspire and educate 100 million people towards living a high performance lifestyle. So where did that come from, and where is that more than just a passion, and where is it a purpose? It probably started really developing it into the state it is now in 2015. In 2015, just to walk you through, in the summertime, I was working at Auburn University. We typically have to train pretty early in the morning because it gets legendary hot during the day. So there was a point come July where I was getting up, training my team, and then pretty much going home and going to sleep or chilling until the next day, which isn't normal, right? That's probably a signal of something's going on. So I sought out actually like a concierge medical doctor, and we did some blood work, and they said, "Oh, okay, you have adrenal fatigue." I'm like, I'm 30. Not even, I was 29 still. And I was like, all right, well, what do we do about it? I was glad there's an answer. A lot of times people, when they're searching, they just want someone to give them an answer. It doesn't matter if it's the right one. They're just like, this is an answer and I can go forward with it. So I started supplementation and doing things for adrenal fatigue for about 6 weeks. And before a flight with the team to Missouri, I remember going to our team doc and I'm like, Doc, if I walk 10 feet, like from here to here, I feel like I have done the hardest leg workout of my life. My legs are cramping, they're heavy. It's like, all right, I'm going to give you some magnesium, help with the muscle cramping. This was before delicious electrolytes had magnesium in them. And I was like, also, my heart rate just feels like it's racing. My resting heart rate was around 90 beats per minute. And he's like, yeah, it's kind of slightly tachycardic, but, I'll give you some candy. Maybe it's some anxiety from how you're feeling. And then, one awesome thing about hard candy is it distracts your head from your heart beating out of your chest. So went on the trip. Long story short, we come back, not doing any better. I go and lead workouts the next week, and I'm going to pick up a prescription, and my doctor's PA happened to be in there, and she saw me, and that's what saved my life. My color of my skin was about the background of Elliot's screen there. It was nice and gray.
Wow.
My lips were pretty green. I kind of look like a walking zombie, so I'm ready for Halloween season, She's like, I'm going to need you to come with me and do some blood work. And I was like, well, I have a group in the morning and then I can come in. So the next day I'm driving to work and I start to notice my peripheral vision's leaving me. So I'm getting like kind of tunnel vision. There are definitely signs of something's going on. And at this point, like I don't have any energy at all. I'm wearing sweatpants and a hoodie in September in Auburn, Alabama. So like something's up. So I have someone actually drive me to the doctor's office, and I'm like, I think you can just leave me here. I'm probably going to be here a while. And there were steps taken immediately that helped save my life. My doctor took my blood, actually drove it to a lab to get centrifuged, to get at least an internal look at what's going on. They drove me then directly to the hospital, to the oncology section. In walks a hematologist, and he's like, I'm going to take some more blood. Walks back in, says, hey, my name is Dr. Brian Johnson. You're in a blood emergency, and I think you have leukemia. I'm just not sure what type. And I went, awesome. And he's like, what? And I'm like, I knew something was really wrong. You just told me, so let's make it better. And when you're low on red blood cells, I'm sure you both have worked out or summited a mountain and been low on oxygen, right? It's hard to move. So now imagine you don't have the internal fuel that actually transports oxygen, which is red blood cells. So that feeling, like, I don't know how to describe to people accurately, like suffocating from the inside, but you don't feel like you're suffocating. That's the great thing about the brain. You don't know when you're drunk. You don't know how low you really are. So I believe that day my overall hemoglobin or my red blood count level was 3, and now it's showing at like 14 liters, which is awesome. So it's good to have more in the tank, that's for sure. Went on and got transported by ambulance same day up to UAB and was diagnosed with acute myeloid leukemia. I had some favorable genetics as far as mutations and non-mutations. So I did standard chemotherapy plus a clinical trial and was able to reach remission in my first induction and stay in remission still to this day. And then October 20th of 2020 was my 5 years of remission. And so I actually got to shift that narrative of being in remission to being cured. And so now just 6 days ago, we celebrated 3 years of being cured, which is legendary.
Oh yeah. It definitely is.
So
I didn't know that.
Really?
That's the distinction. I mean, I remember you talking about, the 5 year mark, and this being your third year, being with what we're going to talk about here shortly. But I didn't realize that was the actual distinction between, like, you have to be in remission for 5 years.
Yeah, so every cancer is different. And the reason it's 5 years is that 5 years, my risk of AML returning is the risk of anyone in normal population that hasn't had it getting AML for the first time. So percent chance are of the normal population. So that's why I can say I'm cured.
Awesome.
What's that like on that day when that kind of crosses that threshold and someone comes to have that conversation with you?
I wish it was like, here's this big banner, like you're cured.
Yeah.
It was also COVID, so it was just a little different. But the cool thing that happened was I became good friends with my friend Vernon during COVID. And I flew out to Virginia Beach. I'm this type of person. Hold on one second. Come here. Someone gets anxious when I start talking about this stuff, so he has to come by my side. So another side note, I got my dog Kilo 1 month before I was diagnosed. So he was the first creature that knew I was sick. Because even as a puppy, he would just come curl up next to me and just chill. And I would pretty much just fall asleep wherever. Yeah. Lay down.
Yeah, he's earned that right to have an opinion.
Yeah, so he's like, "Hey, you're talking about our story again, and I'm not
Yeah,
included.
yeah.
So can you clue me in?" So
Mic
I
me
flew
up.
out, yeah, exactly. So I flew out to Virginia Beach, and Vernon had done a really wicked, cool thing. There's this nonprofit that does art therapy for PTSD for soldiers, and it's called Tribescape. And they take electric leads and burn into boards, and they burned into a board of 5 and put my favorite color in it. And like they were just walking me through the shop, and they're like, "Oh, that's cool," and I didn't even notice. Like I just thought everything was so cool. Like this is my first time meeting them, and so it's just there's so many relationships and people I've met by being vulnerable enough to share my story that it's like, how can I not? And
Yeah.
one thing I think you and I have talked about is when you share your scars, you hopefully give someone else the right to feel like they can share theirs. And
Yeah.
that community is something that, no one asks to belong to. But if you are then able to get on the other side of it, that platform of privilege is now something I have to use and move forward with.
Yeah. One of my favorite things through all this has been like internet people that I've gotten to know.
Hmm.
And you are a very early on internet person who, through just chit-chatty conversations, did a lot for me in terms of realizing the power of storytelling. Because I think it's one of the things that you do masterfully well is tell a story without saying, "Hey, everyone, gather around. I'm going to tell a story." So you're going to tell the story regardless, and if you're watching, you'll get the through lines. The plot will show itself.
Just so you know, there is a catch-22 with that. There's also a sign above my head that says, "Please tell me your story."
Sure.
So I'm
Sure.
anywhere in the world, and people come up, and I start catching stories left and right, and I'm like, I wasn't really in receiving mode, but yeah, I'll get there. Give me a second.
Yeah, it's funny you said that because that was actually something as we were getting ready to chat. That was kind of a thing actually that I wanted to ask you about in my head is that exact thing right there, which is when you have been so open with your story and the way that you have. I imagine that's a thing that you are getting, which you just alluded to, getting quite regularly. People sharing their own hardships, their own loss, their own grief, and so you become kind of this receptacle for other
Yeah,
folks sharing that with you.
for sure, and
And that's
that
its
is
own
something
unique
that,
thing.
yeah, and that's something I'm completely like always open and ready for. Um, and I've gotten much better. I think that I would say I have the tendencies to be an empath. And as you have more experience with that, you get better at holding space for people without carrying their weight for them. And I think that some people mistake that of like, you have to go through it and feel it with them. And that's not true at all. I can go through something with someone and not have to take on their feelings in order to help
Yeah.
them get through it. And it's a really important distinction. I don't think I had that earlier in life. Um, what I was more talking about is the random person in the airport, grocery store, gas station, public transit, anywhere coming up to me and be like, "Hey," and then all of a sudden we're in a conversation that I didn't see coming and has nothing to do with anything. They don't know me from anyone. And I'm like, "All right, here, can I turn off the light? The cab is closed." Like, I don't,
Yeah.
Yeah.
so it's a
So
catch
we're not
22.
hiring right now, right?
Yeah,
Like, yeah, we're all
yeah. But I
It's one of those things. I think it's funny you say. I never thought about it until you just said it. That it's like you said. You have that light on, and people don't realize that you have no control over turning it on or off.
correct.
Right? It's just there, and because I've been the recipient of that in other fashions, but it's just like, that's a wild concept that I just hit me right now. Like you're always that person, and it's funny because our first interaction, that was more than evident to me.
Hmm.
You know,
You mean our
because
first
I don't.
phone call or first ever
Yeah,
interaction?
our
Okay.
first phone call. Our first phone
Yep.
call. Yeah, because well, even leading to the phone call, like I wasn't expecting to talk to anybody. Right when we first started in this group, and people were like, "We're going to trade phone calls," and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"Oh, okay."
Yeah. See ya.
Bet. Sure.
Yeah.
See ya.
Yeah.
For a good
And so
time
that,
call.
yeah. And then next thing you know, we're talking but it's very apparent like that's kind of what's going on.
I
Um,
think to that point, there's a thing where it is a little bit of a game recognized game thing, though, when you see that in terms of being able to recognize someone else that has that capacity just in the way that they speak and the way that they share things. And I would say the same thing from when we were on the initial couple of group calls together. I was like, oh, I recognize that person. I recognize what that's like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I think it's struggle recognizes struggle, and
Mm-hmm.
and like the '90s rap in me would be like real recognize real, but it's not even that. It's struggle recognizes struggle. It's like, yeah, I see those lines across those eyes. I know what those mean. I see the
yeah,
darkness in that
yeah,
soul. I see
Yeah.
the burden that
yeah.
person's carrying, and some of it's not even like, hey, I'm going to help them with it. It's just like it's sometimes nice to acknowledge someone else is going through it.
I
Mm-hmm.
always think of it as the Jeeper, when they do the Jeep wave at each other.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's good.
Yeah,
It's a
that's
Jeep.
what
It's
I
a Jeep
always.
thing.
Yeah, so that's what I always think of when I see those people you recognize that have it. It's just like the dudes in the Jeep. You just wave. I
Yeah.
know. We just move on.
Your
Um,
original question though was like about that pivotal moment. And so, after treatment and everything, like what I would say the difference was there was the private life of mine and then the coach life of mine. And then
mm,
after after that, there was just one life. And part of that is like trying to be trying to be the top and right version of a coach in everyone else's mind,
mm,
like the right one, so that the men that run the organizations at that time wouldn't block me from growing, so the women that came before me wouldn't be disrespected of how I'm carrying their torch, so that the athletes around me respected me even though I was similar in their age, so the coaches above me respected me but I wasn't too much of a leadership role to threaten them. So it's like constantly balancing the water on the professional side to be the right version of a coach, and not really knowing. I've always been very detailed and processed as a coach, but now it's I'm the same person coaching that I am off the field, out of the gym. And it wasn't like oh, I'm living two lives. I never felt like that. It was just like you switch one on and you switch one off. I'm operating, I'm not operating. And now I'm in a space where the way I operate is just how I operate, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's merged into just this is the way I am now.
Come here.
out of that equation, right? Trying not to disrespect certain people, trying to keep the respect of others, trying to honor certain things. Which one of those at the time or even now kind of had the biggest premium for you? Like which one was the thing that you wanted to make sure you held and you did right? If there is an order.
I kept putting coaches on pedestals of like, this is the version of the best coach in the world. So let me
Mm-hmm.
model after that. Cause I didn't have mentors, but I thought I had people that I modeled after. But every
Yeah.
time I'd meet those people and watch them operate, I'm like, okay, they're still just humans. They're still just people. So I can do that. And I can do it in my way, the best way, which is only my way. Like, and that's not saying I'm the best coach. It's just saying the best way I can do it is my own way, not replicating or copycatting someone else's version of a coach. And the best way I operate as a coach is being myself and allowing for expression of emotion, vulnerability, creating time, holding space. Sometimes the workout isn't the priority, and that's just is what it is.
I love that. Like I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with, especially in like leadership roles, right? Like you see something and you want to model after it, and then you try to model after it, and you don't realize that the only way to do this is to be you. And
A thousand percent. And there's so many people that's like, leadership's a really good example of that, right? And coaching and yo, come here, sit. This is what we're dealing with, boys. I'm sorry.
you're
Coaching
good.
inevitably is a leadership role, and
Yeah.
I think that I've had such a cool opportunity to be a mentor, to be a friend, to be a coach, to be a teammate. And coaching has been the most rewarding piece thus far. But it doesn't mean it's my only piece, because I want to impact more people than right now coaching is allowing. In that I've decided to operate within the lens of sport, which means I'm working with 30 people. Well, if I want to impact 100 million, either I got to live a couple hundred lives, or I got to figure out a way to operate and impact more people while also doing this. And so I think it's an important distinction. A lot of people, when you talk to doctors or coaches, they're like, oh, I got in it because I want to help people. And I'm like, helping people can come in many different ways. You can make $100 million and invest that in research to create a cure so that you're helping people. So I try to encourage a lot of people that to understand that just because you think coaching is fun, or you think that it's exciting to be on the performance side, that's not the only way you can help people. That can be a passion, but it's probably not your purpose. It's the lens of what you've decided to operate.
Yeah. It's so we've been kicking around the idea again of like this whole like the identity of having no identities, right? Because it limits you. And so when you say that, that's kind of what I think of, like, what is my skill set? What is the version of me at my base, right? I might say soldier, I might say this, but at the end of the day, or like when we're talking about someone else, like one of the things I'm going to put it on you, Elliot. One of the things when you and I were just talking recently, I was at your base self, you are creator, right? It's not about a job title or something else, and so that's what I hear. Well, here's the idea though. So you want to affect 100 million people. What does that look like to you at this moment? I know it's
Yep.
going to morph and change, but what does that look like to you right now?
So if Elliot's a creator, what I say is I'm a connector. I connect people to information, or people to each other, or people to themselves. And people to each other and people to information, that can be in coaching right now. People to each other and people to themselves can also be in some of the challenges and things I've recently been starting and doing. And it can be in education as well. So like and doubling down on the information that I'm so fortunate to have gained over my career, how can I let that be more known to the masses, if you will? And it's not saying, again, nothing I know is unique, but my combination is unique. And so if I can help leverage, motivate, and inspire people so that everyone seeks some version of a high performance lifestyle, then that's the impact I feel I can make in the world.
And this is where that light thing, the light idea we were talking before, it switches to where it becomes a light that goes outwards, that you're figuring out how to make that shine in these different ways. That you're identifying, okay, this is what this person needs in this individual moment, and being able to put it in a way that makes sense to somebody, the idea of meeting somebody where they're at in terms of whatever they need, which is what you made a career of in coaching different athletes and that. And now this is the same. So it's that same skill set that applies in this unique way. And we've been talking about this idea about you take a skill that you have and you apply it somewhere where it's not being readily applied. And this ability to, the same way that you'd look at an athlete and you'd look at, why isn't this person maybe clicking with this concept or clicking with this thing, you tweak, adjust, etc. It's the same thing you're doing now, but on just a different recipe, I guess, in my head.
Yeah, the way I think of it is like sound reverberation, right? Like when sound starts, the sound wave can be small, but then it can also be amplified. And so I'm just trying to amplify that sound wave, and hopefully what I say reverberates with other similar sound waves. And then hopefully I'm just a bridge that can connect the sound waves. And then all of a sudden we have this magnetic resonance that just carries itself.
Yeah. Kind of just begets itself to grow.
Connecting people to themselves is that's big, and I like that. It really is. Like, I mean, the more I look at today, and like even the things we do, like we just came from a men's retreat, and even, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to talk to you today, like about the challenge you just put yourself through, right? And
Okay.
so, yeah, like I look at that as that's a way to connect to yourself, at least in my head, you
Totally.
know. And so just how does that look and feel for you? Or like, what did that one, how did you get to that challenge? I mean, I have an idea, but I want to hear what you say.
Yeah, for the past like really 2 years, I've connected with some amazing individuals here in Seattle, and they've been helping drive something that I had inside of myself. So when people see something in you that you're not ready to fully see in yourself, it helps when they just kind of pull it out. So I have some friends here and elsewhere that have been slowly, gracefully pulling that out of me, and um, just trying to see like to impact more people, how can I leverage this social media experiment that we all have to help with that? And what's a way that feels unique and authentic and genuine to me? Genuine, authentic being the most important. And that's where kind of like, how can I bring together these communities that I happen to belong to? Well, I can do that and create some form of collaboration between those communities, inspire them to change in something that I consider foundational, which is some level of fitness. But there's so many barriers for people. And so the idea wasn't fully formed actually until I talked with Go Ruck a little bit and just about what this could be. Like we knew we wanted to do something together, but I wasn't sure. And then I had a conversation literally 2.5 weeks before October with this woman that runs a charity here to raise awareness for um, pediatric cancer. And her daughter had a version of pediatric cancer. And she was just talking to me about her own life and how she was this amazing athlete in college and how she's so far from that now. And she wants to get back to it. And I'm like, how often do we hear that? Right. And so I just started thinking about um, in cancer, personal opinion, my job as a patient, I have one mission: survive. The job of the caretaker is really hard. It's operate in the normal life, plus pick up all these other pieces of this person's life, make sure those don't drop, and then also hold this emotional space and consider the fact that I could be losing this person I care about and get this education that I never wanted in chemotherapy and cancer.
Mm.
So they pretty much put their physical life and the things to take care of them on pause. And afterwards, it becomes almost too much of a mountain to come back to that. And that's when I was like, okay, I have to do something for those people. So that's what the 20-day ruck challenge was about. I chose rucking because I knew if someone wanted to come walk with me, they could walk. And I was still doing some sort of fitness challenge to our community that was like, okay, that's pretty hard. That's a challenge. So I needed to set off a spark on both sides. Maybe I can do this. Maybe that's hard. That's it. And blend those two together to create an opportunity. So I rucked 20 days every day with a 30-pound rucksack, and I rucked a 5K. And to me, the end goal was to help one person. Like, what was success? To help one person. And so I was blown away at the number of people that actually got involved. And I shouldn't be, right? Like, coaches at this point, I know the coach community is just going to show up. And they always do. And they put out, whether they post it on their social or send me a message or don't even do it, I know they're out there doing the work, because that's what they do. That's what coaches do. They show up. Did you guys freeze?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then on Fridays, I invited community members to join me. So 3 Fridays, 3 different locations, people came. And the people I wanted to impact, and he's okay with me telling it, is this guy named Max. He former military guy. He lost his daughter to the same type of cancer I had last year. And we happened to connect here. So I'm like, okay, like sometimes the path reveals itself. And I'm like, well, this is the guy. So Max, if you're listening, you still have to do another 5K ruck, and I can't wait to join you. If I can help inspire people to take that first step, most of those people are the people willing to take 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, but they needed the help with the first step to remind them how amazing they actually are, because they just forgot along the way.
The power of, to go back to where you started, there's something really special about you were talking about the people who kind of were nudging or pushing you to do something. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a really powerful thing when you are talking about something or say something out loud that you think you're interested in doing, because I had this man do it for me, where you say out loud a thing that you're thinking, and instead of somebody going, "Oh yeah, for sure," I'm like, "You 100% you should do that, man. That'll be sweet." Somebody just goes, "Mm-hmm," and they affirm it in a way of like they aren't shocked that you have an idea about doing something. And I think that's a powerful thing when it's this natural, like, yes, and then what? And where does it go from there?
Yeah, I think that definitely can be an underrated validation tool. Mm-hmm. I think it's also, personally, it's like, as a female, I've had no opportunities to work with other female coaches, really, like a lot. I've had female head coaches and things. So here I have two badass females that like are CEO founders, like in their own industries, crushing it. And I didn't know that was not necessarily validation, but that was a friendship I needed. And I think that we don't contribute directly to each other because we're in completely different industries. So therefore, there is no competition. It's genuine friendship. And I think that's such a, I'll take that as a superpower any day.
How did that come about?
So apparently one of them and I communicated like 12 years ago. Mm-hmm. She was considering getting into my industry, and someone told her to email me just because they knew me as a female in the industry. And back then there was some, but now there's a lot more, thankfully.
Yeah.
And apparently I responded to her emails and like whatever. I have no recollection of any of this. I wish I still had that Auburn email access, because I would go back and look it up, and that would be really fun. But I was in a gym because I wanted to box there. She was there training, and this other person was with her. And so we get introduced, and she's like, "Wait, are you the Megan Young that worked at Auburn?" And I was like, "Well, that's weird." I was like, "Yeah." And so she was like, "Oh my God, we know each other." And I was like, "Oh, that's unreal." And from the jump, it's kind of like, to your point of like, scars recognize each other, real recognize real. It was like from the jump, boom, that these are my people, this is my tribe, let's go.
Yeah. I think the reason why I kind of exclaimed like when you said that, not because, because I recognize it, but not in the same sense, but like when you're somewhere and you're often the odd one out, right? And then you find your people, you're like, everything feels a little bit better even without even knowing it. You don't even realize it sometimes. You're just like, oh, why things seem so cool all of a sudden.
Yeah, you're like, wait, I still ask my partner sometimes early on to meeting those two. I'm like, are they my friends?
It's a wild thing as an adult, man. It's a wild thing to be like, we're friends now? We're friends? Yeah.
And it's like, it's important because so much of like people you get engaged with and interested in, you do business with or have partnerships with, and it's like, then it's transactional and it's business agreements and things. And sometimes it's really nice to have some that are none like that.
Yeah. Just homies. So here, strength conditioning has essentially been in your life forever. What does that feel like now versus when you first started? Because we've had the pleasure of being at Summer Strong and meeting some other female coaches, strength coaches, who kind of said their piece. And so I'm interested in like what yours is.
Okay, first of all, I have an insatiable quest of wanting to learn all the things. It's a problem. So young in a career, you can imagine that probably felt like a problem. I mean, it was like printing off elite FTS articles and having binders.
I don't know that feeling at all. What are you talking about?
And it was like T Nation was my Tuesday night, like it was trying to learn everything I could about MELSIF and super training and what do you mean I actually need to know physiology? The physiology of the muscle is do more, right? Like these were the
Work
things.
harder.
Yeah, exactly. And then it became of how much can I learn this different style of training? Like I was strong, I was a thrower, I was explosive, I loved it. How good can I get at Olympic lifting? Okay, what does it mean to do escalated density training? What does it mean to do German volume training? What does it mean to then transfer and be more athletic and more fit? So like it was dual part knowledge and experience. That's kind of been my journey as a coach, and I think it's been amazing because it's um, allowed me to feel so many different things. And a lot of them are embracing some shitty, sucky things that don't feel great. But then after you're like, wow, I did that. And then personal path as a coach. I've always wanted to drive to be the best coach, period. And whatever that meant to me. So sometimes that was making the best periodization plans, learning the technology that I felt no one else was learning yet, learning how to do systems before people were doing systems, whatever I thought was going to be new and also actually relevant, I wanted to be able to apply those. And so part of that was like going back to school a couple times to just learn more, to be able to dissect those things better, because I didn't want people to be like, here's this technology, use it. I wanted to be able to vet it myself and know, like, does this meet the use case? And I didn't know how to do that outside of basic statistics, right? So going back to school has been a huge part of that. And then realizing you go from realizing you have to learn everything to realizing you just have to know the people that know all the things. And then that's when you really start cooking with juice is now if I have a question about someone about a specific thing, I know who I'm calling. And it's less pressure to understand every amino acid and how those reactions work and every bit of metabolism and then every bit of muscle physiology and then every bit of sleep and every bit of nutrition. And I'm sure that's what a lot of coaches feel now is they have to know all these things. And at the end of the day, I think the single most thing I have to realize to know is I'm working with people. And so if I am always present with the person in front of me, that's going to be a good starting point.
One of the best leaders I ever met in my life told me that leadership can be boiled down to a 4-letter word: care.
Yep.
And
I actually said to a friend the other day that care is the underlying principle of coaching. So that's really funny. It's not funny at all. It's ironic. Yeah,
we'll insert like a laugh track right there, so it just hits right as soon as you say it. It'll just like pop off.
Yeah, it just is, and you can't just care about people without knowledge. Like there has to be a dose of both, right? There's plenty of people that care a lot, but they hurt a lot of people. Because they don't have the foundational knowledges or principles or understanding of actual training. And there's a lot of people that know a lot and don't care at all. And people also will pay for that if it gives them the result they want. But I think the best combination, especially if if you call one of my athletes from 12 years ago, chances are they probably still talk to me. So being one of my athletes.
Here's what I'd say, right?
Yeah.
So here's what I would say to what you're saying. I'll merge a couple things you said together to make it maybe make it make more sense for me at least. Genuine care to me is the ability to know that you don't know something and go figure it out so you don't hurt people. Right. And so you do the right things. And because one of the same leader, what he used to tell me about when he said care is the only 4-letter word you need for leadership. And what he would say is that care doesn't mean that it's all puppy dogs and pound cakes and that I'm nice to you. And I'm kind to you all the time. Like sometimes care is me telling you, get your ass in here and do this. Sometimes care is making you do all the things you hate doing because it's going to save your life. or it's going to make you prepared, or whatever that might be. And so, for me, if I zoom out a little bit and I say care, what I actually mean is that I care enough to ...
Yeah.
to train, to
Yeah.
learn. You know,
I
and
love that.
That's what I know watching you, right? And then even listening to your story is you care. You care enough to go learn all the modalities. You care enough to take care of your people. Like, you strike me as, and tell me if I'm wrong, you strike me as a coach who feels successful when people count on you.
1,000%.
Was there ever a time during the initial kind of download of all the information, or when all that was kind of first sinking in, where you felt like that care ever wavered?
Never. And part of that too is, part of the story of my makeup is I'm a product of 2 divorces. Had some different things happen during my early years. It probably made me mature a little faster than a lot of other kids that maybe didn't go through those things. And so my slogan, like, I kind of came out of my shell in college. And so everybody, I had a nickname. I can't believe I'm about to share this on a podcast. Jesus. All right. My nickname in college was Big Mama, in that I always just took care of everybody. And
Yeah.
I was on the track team. I was like the leader of that team. And even from a young age, like the upperclassmen would try and like destroy me, and they just couldn't, because I was just like, you can't, like, there's nothing to destroy here, and that I just felt connected to everyone, and I was connected to every group on campus. Like, there wasn't one type person that I didn't jive with. And God, I just used a 70s word. I'm born in the, all right, whatever. And
All right, it works. We'll go with it.
This is a multi-generational podcast.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then, but my motto was like, I'll do everything for you, but I don't need anything from you. So I actually didn't want people, you could rely on me, but I didn't want to have to rely on anyone. Then in grad school's wild, right? I think we did the math one time, and I think I averaged 2.5 to 3 hours sleep for the year and a half I was in grad school. Like, that, it is what it is, right? Dessert was a cantaloupe. Like, that's what I call dessert, because that's all you could afford, but I met my best friend, and she had a similar upbringing to me, and she brought me back. She's the one that brought the care back out of me from now people, I want to rely on people. I don't want to just show up for people. I want to rely on people too. And so without her, like, really showing me what love and family was in a different way, and that's nothing against my family, just in a different way, I don't know that care would be the center, foundational cornerstone of who I am. So that definitely goes to her reminding me that that's okay. To genuinely care for someone means you have to also give a piece of yourself to them.
With this being said, and care and everything else, I want to go back to the 100 million people,
Okay.
and where you are right now. I know I asked you like what that looks like now, and being a connector and everything else, but what part of that care? So I think I know the answer. I want to know what part of that care resonates to get 100 million people and affect and change 100 million people. Because I don't imagine from you it's because you want not that you don't want admiration. We all do, but I don't think that's the centerpiece of it.
No, unfortunately, it means that I have to expand myself in different ways to belong to other communities, to then merge my pre-existing communities to those communities, and therefore build upon that magnetic resonance like I was talking about. And yeah, like, it started with rucking, and then people were like, oh, what's next? And it hit me the 2 days before the final one. I was like, oh, I think it's time to do a return to run. It's like, dang, that sucks. I hate running. But it hit me, and that's when I hit my friend up. I was like, hey, I want to be able to run a 10K anywhere, anytime, for fun. And so that was the goal. And now that I'm in it, right, we're in week 2, it's, so running community, I guess, to the next community I want to impact. And the only way I know how to get there is by doing. And then the community after that probably is going to happen next is something with outdoors, because I live in the Pacific Northwest. So it'll either be working with, and I'd never partnered with a brand or a company before to do anything. And part of that was I come from this cut of the old cloth that, like, we're here to build and work with athletes and serve teams and organizations, but we don't really display, the athletes. Like, we don't really display, it's not about us. And I believe that falsely. And part of that is, like, sure, there's plenty of people that want a limelight, but I can't make the impact I want if I'm not willing to put myself out there. So by having such a positive response from this first thing I did, it lets me know there's a next thing. So there will be brands and partners and things that I do to bring people from wherever they are into where it's just a path forward. It doesn't mean it's the right path. It's just a path forward.
It's using what you have access to further explore what this idea of purpose is. We have lots of conversation or with, I mean, it happened this weekend. It's happened on other ways of people having conversations about, well, I'm trying to find my purpose. And I think a line that I won't claim as mine, but Han says is, well, go find out, go do things, go have experiences, go try these things and see how that allows you to find those moments where you discover it by doing and not sitting and wondering, okay, I need to figure this out like it's a math problem, but rather something that you have the opportunity to go out and collect data on and then figure out what speaks to you. And this new way of speaking of, like, these new different types of adventures or these new different types of things now presents more opportunities from one to another.
And for me, it's like, if people resonate with any one part of me, right? Like I said, I'm not unique by any means. And they can see me joining and doing these other things. Well, that's one mode of inspiration, hopefully, or activation to get them going. And then I think the other path is doing education on a bigger scale. Like, I'm flying to Australia Sunday to speak at a thing, but that's always been there, like talking to coaches. Now, and by talking to coaches, I'm talking to their clients, but to get more directly in front of those people up and down from that pipeline is probably the next goal of how do I serve the public good more, and how do I reach more people. And I'll just start where my 2 feet are in the communities I'm already in, and that I'm going to try and be like that freshman that was on campus and get to know every community there. Like, if I can do that within my lens of performance and high performance lifestyle here, then that'll be where I start.
Yeah, it's that resonance, right? It's making that resonance grow. It's making that ripple last even longer as it goes out before it dissipates out.
We work through this with a different situation, right? And I think this applies to you, and maybe it does. We have somebody that in our expanded universe that can't seem to stay on the internet, but their stated goal is to help people, right? And so finally had a conversation with him, and I was like, listen, like, if you want to help people, you got to be where the people are, you know. And it becomes one of these things, I think, so in reverse for you, it's not that you're getting kicked off the internet or social media. It's amplifying your signal to a point where it's almost undeniable. It's one of those things where it's like you never want to do it. Almost no one that deserves it, I think, wanted to be in the spotlight.
Yeah.
Right. And then you realize at some point in time, like, you have something to say, something that matters, something of value. And your friends, as you stated, will be like, hey, you should probably do this. And you'll shy away and fight. try and wiggle room your way out of it, and the next thing you know, somebody shoves you in front of the light like thing. Movie example just escapes me.
Oh, yeah.
Gets shoved out in front of the talent contest.
Yes, it's not Billy Madison.
Oh, Napoleon Dynamite.
Yep.
Boom.
This has been my moment. This is what it's all been for. It's all led to this moment for me to be useful. To be like, this is all what all my training's been for. We did it.
So it's your Napoleon Dynamite moment, right? We're going to shove you on stage now, and you got to get it done. Which I love, honestly, because I think, and I remember the conversation I think the last conversation we had where I think you were kind of mulling over all of this stuff. And so this is really cool to hear. One,
terrifying. Just
it is terrifying.
It's not comfortable. And that's like when you're probably doing something right, it probably feels a little uncomfortable, and you're like, yeah.
Well, I think that's the best part, right? Like, as a self-proclaimed person who likes adventure, like, what do I really like about adventure? Yeah, I like the cool pictures and I like the cool stuff and everything else, but I also really kind of got in touch with that little piece that's like, hey, you might die.
You forgot you like this.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah,
exactly.
Bitch. Yeah,
exactly. So
it's funny you mention that too, because I haven't traveled internationally solo in a long time, and this trip coming up next week is over my birthday, and my partner was like, "Oh, you want me to come?" And I was like, "No." And she was like, I was like, "Yeah, I don't know where that came from." And I immediately regret that decision. But yep, it's time.
No, I get that. That's I mean, side note, right? For and this leads into your thing. For the unreasonable life, I think there's nothing better than a solo international scary trip.
Totally.
And so, with that being said, we talk about an unreasonable life an awful lot. Go figure, right? You've mentioned this high performance life, and so what does that mean to you, and what does that look like to you?
I'll start with a question that someone once asked me. What is your perfect day? So actually, let's reverse it. What's your perfect day?
Oh man. I'm not going to go into great detail. We'll just say this. I love my mornings. I love being behind my desk in the morning and writing and reading. I love taking a nice long walk, preferably fall, right? Preferably fall weather. Preferably somewhere where I can wear my headphones and not worry about getting mugged or assaulted or anything else. Yeah, run over. Yeah. Garbage trucks are dangerous. Don't ask me how I know.
This is getting very specific. For not being specific, it's getting very specific fast.
Yeah, but so that's and then that leads to training, and a fantastic breakfast after training. You said perfect day, so I'm going to incorporate some kind of fun in it. Probably go get not a cold plunge, but an actual river.
What else?
Food, fire, friends, fun. It's my ingredients for a dope life. So it has to be all.
What are the relationships? When's that?
Yeah, that's what I was getting to. Food, fire, friends. So it's always, your lover, your homies. I mean, one of the things about that I don't think I've said out loud to anyone except for really Elliot and people kind of associated in the Warpath universe is like, I would love this situation where I basically employ all my friends, right? In some way, shape, form, or fashion, and all the things that they're good at. Not that I'm like creating fake jobs for them,
Yep.
Because
so basically, the people that would then work for you, you're basically homies, are doing the things they love while also operating in a space close by.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I'm basically creating a cult. No one knows it.
Yeah.
We call it
the LeBron James principle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly, but I mean, it's just that, and so Food Fire Friends is how I would sum it up. I believe work is a part of it. No, I'm not one of these guys that wants to retire just because it's my perfect day. So I want to spend my time chasing fires that I like, man. And there's people that I want to affect. There's things I want to affect. There's shit I want to learn selfishly, which is why I like the podcast. You know,
What about food other than breakfast?
well, food's
Are you hitting your
on my
macros or?
on my perfect day, we're having cultural experiences.
Okay.
Those are the days for cultural experiences.
Yeah, those are the days for cultural experiences. Bland days that blend in. That's when we hit macros. But yeah,
So to answer the
sometimes it's a home.
question,
Yeah, go ahead.
you have hit a lot of my foundational things for a high performance life. You prioritize sleep, you prioritize sweating before the sun, you prioritize some type of nutritional conversation, you prioritize healthy relationships with yourself and others. All the other things are, if you think of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? There's like, what is the triangle look like of high performance lifestyle? It's actually not a triangle. It's like a equilateral, like it just tilted. Because I think everything has an intersectionality profile as opposed to just stacking on top. Because I know for me, if my relationship's not in a good place, it's gonna bleed over into this Venn diagram.
Yeah.
And
So,
if my training goes to shit, I'm gonna have more cultural experiences in my food, aka do whatever I want. Right?
That's what I'm gonna call it right now. I'm like, I'm having a cultural experience.
And then, so now you have that triangle. Actually, I got a piece. I didn't know we were getting to arts and crafts.
I love it. Let's do it.
So let's say you have a simple triangle. So you see your triangle, right? And we're saying it's turned on its side. And then we're saying within this triangle are overlapping priorities, right? The perfect day is in the middle of those, right? But then the thing you don't see is kind of like upward spirals. You guys know about those, yeah? They build on top of itself. So once you've built that foundational layer of things, then you can do more and harder. So you're actually building. And that's like when people talk about stacking habits or stacking days or stacking wins or developing as a person, I want to start seeing those things build on top of each other. And that's when we can say, oh, are you getting your magnesium L-theanate before you go to sleep? Like, we don't have to start there. Let's start where you are, but let's work towards. So I think that sometimes people say, oh, I got to do all the things. And there's this checklist of everything that has to be done and all my supplements and all of this. And that sounds more of like operations and procedures and not a lifestyle.
Yeah. 100%.
So how can I make your lifestyle something? How can I help you encourage yourself to build a lifestyle that hits some non-negotiables that are good for your long-term health and your current health span? Health span being the quality of each year of your life, and then lifespan being how long you live, right? And so I want both of those for people, not just one or the other. It doesn't matter if I live to 100 if I can't go for a hike anymore.
Yeah. That's been on my mind a lot lately. But I want to pause for a second, right? Can we just appreciate how much of a coach you are that you're the first person to do a diagram on this podcast?
To draw on here? Yeah.
Yeah. I just wanted to point that out. Like
it's really top tier. Let me visualize this for you.
Yeah.
Great. I want to make sure you learn this however you learn best.
That was perfect. But I really do like that. So we do it, we don't do it in terms of a Venn diagram, and it's actually, I call it the 5 points of resilience that we have, and it feeds into each other. And so we go like sleep, food, training, and I say silence, right? Silence or learn something, and then the fifth one I always forget, but that's why I write it down.
Probably.
Yeah, it is relationships, because if you eat like an asshole, then you sleep like an asshole, then you're probably an asshole to your person.
Be an asshole.
Yeah. That's exactly it. So
I mean, therefore, you guys understand that all those things are foundational, and I believe everyone deserves not just to sleep, but to understand why sleep is important and how if you have training goals and you've had them forever and you've never reached them and your sleep is shit, how can I help you with this one piece that actually helps with all that other stuff? And there's so many high performers functioning at high levels, whether they're like surgeons or operators or whatever, but that's all they do. And they're stressed out, even though will never admit that, because that would be like admitting some type of fault, and you can't do that when you're a high performer. So, but I can test for it and I can show them that. And sometimes they need the hard mirror, right? That's care. You're saying, oh, I'm operating at a high level. I'm like, all your internals are fucked, my friend. And they need that. They need that visual. They need those numbers to show, like, objectively, you're telling me you feel fine. I'm telling you your body's going, hey, I need some help. I'm barely hanging on. And when you can show people that, and sometimes it's that harsh reality and sometimes it's that gentle encouragement, but everyone starts somewhere different. Some people know it, right? Some people are like, I literally haven't gone for a walk in 100 days or since COVID. I'm like, cool. Can we like buy some socks? Like, I don't care where you start. And my goal is not for everyone to be in a gym training. My goal is not for everyone to get my type of sleep. My goal is not for everyone, because a lifestyle is just that. It's a style. It has to have your style and your flair to it. And even though I love to eat dinner at 5 or 4:30 is really nice, and then go to bed early, like, that doesn't mean that's for everyone, right? And I talk about, it's not about negating stress. It's about having enough resiliency to handle a fuck ton of it.
Yeah. The more you can handle is the more you can handle. But if you have the systems and things in place,
and therefore, like, when you have real life things happen, hopefully you've had enough of those triangles stacking till you can rely on the system, and therefore what before would have been a 10 stress to you is now a 2. And therefore you're still a better partner. You're still training. You're still doing those things. And you've built up the resiliency to not drop things when other things happen.
The idea of building habits and routine. Well, the idea of building habits and routines so that way you're equipped for when you don't have those things available to you, which sounds like it doesn't make sense, but that's the point of it, is that you know how to develop those mechanisms that when I can't, whatever, cold plunge or whatever it is, that becomes a morning thing, then I'm still going to be okay because I know what it's like to regulate that.
1000%.
I used to think of it like the video game health bars on like Mortal Kombat. Like the more I trained and the more I did everything, like the bigger bar I got, and that way I could handle more stuff. You know. Yeah. But random aside.
It's not though. Like when people talk about cups, right? And like you pour them out as you do things, you refill them when you do proper inputs of fueling and nutrition. People just think about filling up the cup. I'm like, I want to have to get a bigger cup.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And let's be real too, is experiences are coming at an all-time premium now. People are choosing full distraction or full escape. And so as we continue to evolve into a world like that does hard resets and does new adventures, and that becomes an experience people want and they're seeking, even though they don't know why. It's probably because they want aspects of their life, and they're so far from their perfect day, they don't know how to get there. So those things become vacations. And I know I'm one of those people, like, I need a vacation from the vacation because I got to do all the things and have all the adventure, and I'm exhausted from it because it's not a part of my lifestyle. And now I need a reset to be able to operate back in this normal life. And it's kind of like, when we feel the most internal conflict is when we're living in a life that's so far derived from our morals. That's like internal stress, right? So I'll say that again. Here's your moral compass. You're operating in a space that doesn't allow you to stick to your morals, but you're not willing to leave that space. That distance between is the amount of stress that you're carrying inside. So the same can be said for a lifestyle. Here's the lifestyle you're living. Here are the things you just said to me are in your perfect day. What is the distance between them? That's the quality you're lacking in your life. I want to help people shorten that gap or throw it out.
I love it. Like that.
Yeah.
That hit me. Thinking about when I was at my most stressed in life, like ever. You know, my
When?
compass was all fucked up. When I was depressed and suicidal,
Okay.
right? Like 100%. Like that you said that it like locks in completely, right? I was just my moral compass was here, pointing this way, and I was going this way, and instead of just acknowledging it, I was playing it off. Among all the other things. So it's just funny, you know. Um, Hindsight being what it is, like I can look back on it and be like, oh, that's also probably the 2 years I got the worst sleep of my life. Like all the recipes are like a disaster. The whole thing is just there is no recipe actually. It's just a bunch of ingredients on the table that somebody was like, we'll make something. And what we made was disaster.
So when you talk about quality, like we can talk about training. People in your platform talk training sometimes or no?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Oh
So
yeah, let's do it.
people in training, like there's volume, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's intensity. And then there's this like underlying impact factor of something called density.
Mm-hmm.
And those things together determine quality, right? And I'm not talking movement strategy or complexities. I'm just talking factors. So if I said, okay, you did 4 sets of 10 at 80% and you did it with 2 seconds rest, I understand the volume, the intensity, and the density. When I look at people's life and I'll mark out a week for them and I try and look at the volume, like their work and their sleep, their intensity factors, the things they enjoy, the things they hate, and the density, the time spent on the things they love, that determines quality. And what I often see is people are dumping a lot more in the volume bucket, also with training, and not enough in the intensity and density buckets, because those things require some type of push and some type of change. But they're also where you get the adaptation.
I'm speechless, no notes.
Yeah, I'm not really sure. I'm not going to pretend to add anything onto that other than it's the idea of it's the simple ingredient of the thing that you're probably missing is the thing that's keeping it from happening. And that idea that we've talked before about are you making the most of what you have available to you to make the change that you want to happen? I know when I first started playing around the training world, I thought, well, like I need to get this certain pair of lifters, or I need to get this certain pair of wraps, or I need to get this because that's what I see all these people who are doing all this really cool shit. They've got this kind of stuff. And it's easy to convince myself that, well, it's not going to get to where you want it to get to unless you have this perfect gear or unless you have this perfect ingredient or element to it. And that changed once I started leaning into the idea of seeing what I had available to me to see what I could do with that first. And what I found by a lot of things was that I thought it was addition that I needed, but what I needed was, I don't even know if it's subtraction, but it was a recognition of what I had and how that played into the intensity and density rather than just thinking I needed to add more volume.
Totally. And I think that's why I chose rucking for my first challenge. Is like,
yeah,
it was the least barrier to entry.
Right.
If you can walk, cool, we're in. If you
Right.
are concerned that you have to walk, no problem, we're still in. Right?
Mm-hmm.
If you can walk and that's easy, add more weight. Like that
Mm-hmm.
was it. And what's something I hope I can still do, how old am I? 70 years from now, because I'm going to live forever with a high quality of life. Hopefully I can still carry some weight. And Lord knows my hip mobility will probably be shot by then. By then, hopefully I'll have fake hips and they'll be awesome, but we'll see.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel that. So I just think that there's something, what all this takes though is the willingness to actually assess and confront.
Mm-hmm.
And you all know the scariest thoughts and reactions and emotions and lifestyle factors are in here and they never come out here. So as soon as I get people to start talking these thoughts, we know those thoughts lose their power when we speak them. That's when you go for the walk, you call someone. And when you call someone, you're no longer on the walk alone. And you've said the scary thing and it's no longer scary. And someone else knows. So that's what I want for a high performance lifestyle, is people to take those thoughts out, say them to someone that's just going to hold space or hold a mirror or hold a pen. And then we can start moving forward.
Shame
And
dies
ask them.
shame dies in the dark. That's what I heard recently when it comes to saying like these things out loud, right? And it's something that I've become very like kind of an advocate for. It's like, say this thing out loud, just to
It's
see how it
called your
feels.
saboteur and your sage, right? Like the things that sabotage us are the things that we keep silent, but they're not silent in here. They're the secret drivers, the darkness factors. And I name them. So now I recognize them when they come up. I'm like, oh, hey, I see you.
Yeah.
Good to see you again.
Then when you recognize them, you're like, I know how to handle you.
Yeah. We were talking about that the other day. We were talking about, think about it in this way of that it's somebody who sits in different, those thoughts or those things are sitting in different positions, sometimes in the car, sometimes they're in the back seat, and you just can notice them in the rear view.
Yeah.
But other times they try to slide up front and they're riding shotgun and they're sitting there staring at you like this. And you're like, no, man, we're going. Right. But they move around in different positions. Yeah.
We're going really deep right here. But to bring it back lighter is like the movie Inside Out.
Yeah.
Imagine, sadness, joy. I love those movies.
Yeah.
But imagine if you can do that for the dark side of you.
Yeah.
And you can then add some form of recognition, but hopefully even one day humor. It's like, oh yeah, no surprise, you're back again. I was doing too good for too long.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to question and I want to sabotage myself. So here you are.
Mm-hmm. This is the first time in a while.
Go ahead.
I was going to say the first time in a while I haven't felt that. I haven't heard that voice in a while. That we're having this conversation. I haven't heard that voice of the bottom's going to drop out. And that's a voice that used to show up for me quite regularly when something felt like it was going in a direction of just like, oh, any minute now though, just hold up. Like the bottom's going to drop out of it. And it's an interesting thing when you don't hear it and then you can stop and realize that you don't hear it. And then it makes you even kind of freaked out in another way of just being like, why aren't I feeling that anymore?
Yeah. I mean, the last day I thought about my cancer diagnosis was my cure day. Like it would randomly pop up at some point every day and you're like, oh yeah, that's the thing I have and dealing with. And then literally since they're like, yep, you did it. You hitched. And it wasn't a phone call. No one calls you on the 5th year and is like, congratulations. I woke up that morning and it was like, that's now known as my Alive Day. And that's why it's so important to celebrate those things. So, I don't want everyone to get cancer, but I damn sure love everyone to have a new Alive Day.
Yeah. We just had a really funny experience about this. So during the men's retreat, I flew in on the day that I tried to kill myself, right? And I forgot. So Google reminded me. There's 2 pictures I have on my phone or in my Google that every year pops up and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. But oh yeah, that's right was not exactly accurate until this year. And so we're in the middle of the men's retreat and I was talking to the guys and full stop, frog in my throat, and I get real emotional because I was like, I forgot. I was like, my life is so fucking cool now that I forgot.
And sometimes it's hard not. You're like, wait, do I need to feel guilty that I've forgotten about that part of myself? And I'm here to say, personally, you shouldn't. Like, do I need to? And it's kind of, I don't want to compare it to survivor's guilt, but it's the closest thing I can think of in terms of like, this is a part of me, and it's something that I forever carry with me. but I refuse to live in a mindset of I survived that. And that's what I said during that challenge, is taking survivorship to thrivership. Like, how do we change that narrative and that mindset so that we can change that narrative? And I don't want a parent to always just be the parent that lost their kid.
Yeah.
They at some point have to have
agency,
a new chapter, an agency and a new chapter.
Yeah.
And when that new, and I'm not here to say when that should be or when it should ever be, but I am here to say I'll hold space for you and join you on the walk.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I'll say this real quick, Elliot. I completely agree. I don't know that feeling, but the feeling that I had this weekend when that happened was that I was incredibly elated, and that for me, I've always looked at it as on borrowed time, right? And I was like, it's very much how lucky am I, right? You know,
Yeah.
So I cannot speak for those parents, but what I'll say is, for the thing I do know about, right, for veterans and the people, is how lucky are we that we got to know these people.
Yeah. And therefore, then it's also, how lucky am I to be able to tell it, right? And how lucky am I to be here to be able to help people still?
Yeah.
So every day that I'm not working towards that purpose, I'm going against the grace I've been given.
Yeah. That's the thing, right? That's the thing we were saying earlier. When you pop off and get kicked off of Instagram or so whatever else, and you told me your mission is to help people, well, now I can't believe you, right?
Yeah.
Because you're I just found out, and I don't remember who it is. I don't know if it's Ram Dass or one of these sage people. They said, and I had it on a sticky note for years, and I didn't know who said it. It was, I'm here to cross the swamp, not fight the alligators.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So anyways, I just thought that was pretty fucking cool for you. And then
for you.
Well, I mean, for me, it was cool, but almost embarrassing, because I didn't realize it.
Well, and how cool is it to be so far from that person that when you see that, you don't recognize yourself?
Yeah. Well, you speak on it first. How about that?
Yeah. Okay. I mean, I guess we can talk in 10 weeks when I'm done with this return to run program, and I definitely won't recognize myself. Like, no. And if my run coach is listening, please don't listen. I think that Kilo, come here. I think the other side, though, is like, I don't think I really feel anything looking back at that person now. I don't think it's like remorse or regret or power or empathy. It's just like, it's kind of like looking at a history book that has nothing to apply to me.
Oof.
And I know it's a part of me, but it doesn't apply anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. Mine's like looking at how I propose this. It looks like looking at a picture. It's like looking at a picture. And it's funny because there's a picture that I associate with it.
But do you still see yourself in that picture, or do you just recognize parts of yourself in that, or do you recognize none of it and you're just like, that was that time?
I recognize that person.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep. I don't,
There is one picture of me the day I got into the hospital. I was not even transferred to the hospital I did treatment. And oh no, it was in the hospital I did treatment. I'm walking around with my chemo pole. I got in trouble multiple times because I just go for a walk in the hospital. I don't have an immune system, dog. I'm not supposed to be out and about. And I would do like push-ups on the railings and stuff, whatever. And I'm walking down the hall, and the SWA at that time, her name was Meredith. She's since passed away of cancer, but she was like one of my biggest advocates when I was in the hospital. And I catch her, and she catches me, and I'm just standing there with my chemo pole, flicking her off. And it's like, I know her still.
Yeah.
That's been there.
That's
I
been
like
there.
that.
Yeah.
First of all, like how tell me you're involved with iron sports by telling me you're walking around the hospital doing push-ups, knowing you're not supposed to, right?
They took the yoga mat and the block out of my hospital room because
yeah,
you can
I
squat
can,
to the couch.
Right.
exactly.
Doing push-ups on the most sanitary part of the hospital, the railings.
Like literally, you don't have red blood cells or platelets. Like if you get a bruise, it won't heal. I'm like, cool. Can I do some more?
Right. Bet.
And then
That's
also
it.
like it's brilliant too in that you don't realize like how sick you are until like you're real sick, and you think you're probably doing way more than you're actually doing. So benefit to my friends and family that actually know what happened in that time, because I'm not one of them.
Yeah. And go kind of dark, but I don't ever think this subject's dark. But everybody else does.
And real quick, hold on. I can either take Kilo out and come back, or we can and pause, or we have like 3 minutes. He just needs to go to the bathroom.
It's up to you. I'm gonna ask probably 2 questions. I don't know what Elliot has, and then we can probably wrap it.
I got one more. I got one question. You can take them. Yeah, you want to run them out?
Let me take him for 2 seconds, and I'll jump back. Is that all right?
Okay. Yeah.
Can we cut? And okay, all right. I'll be right back. Let's go. Jarheads taught me how to drink. They taught me how to surf. That's all I have to say about Jarheads, right?
Well, yeah, you told me that story, so yeah. But here, so we'll get ready to wrap up. Let me mark it one more time. There we go. So before we try and land this whole thing and everything else, I wanted to kind of go dark and then hit some light points. But I don't think this is necessarily dark. Part of what we talk about with an unreasonable life is that you got to have some kind of look towards the end. You know, what death looks like, or what death feels like, or maybe just be afraid of it, or what, on some Marcus Aurelius, like how you meditate on death. And so, being that you've been through everything that you've been through, what does your relationship with that look like? And then has it changed from when you were before you were cured to now? And just basically kind of like, how do you feel in regards to that?
I wouldn't say that the relationship with death is like even that. I think it started out as a relationship with pain, because that was like the thing I confronted most in treatment. And so like I remember specifically, like I think part of it is we learn how ignorant and how strong we are at the same moment. And I was in a lot of a specific, meaning like unknown type of pain. And I remember closing my eyes, and I would go sit in the same chair in my hospital room. And I remember I could close my eyes and I would trace in my mind down from my brain through the nervous system, through my spine to the nervous system, to like the actual signaling, to the receptor uptake, to like where I could see pain, and then I could make it lessen. I could make it stop. I could make it lessen. So I think that's one. That was like my first experience with some type of pain at that level. And again, there's so many good types of drugs now that I don't think it's fair to say how hard that pain was, and everyone's pain experiences pain differently, right? Like depression is pain. Like there's different types of pain. But the question I was asked by like a actual former operator at Summerstrong, Rudy, asked me. We were in a back room together. He goes, "Hey, when you stared death in the face, were you afraid?" And I was like, I actually never thought once about death or dying. I was like, it didn't come up. And I would say that my relationship, therefore, with that is acknowledging how powerful I am for myself, but knowing that I was the fittest, healthiest version of myself when my body, quote unquote, betrayed me. And so knowing that disease and death can come when it wants, and it comes for us all, I don't choose to live a life thinking about it. I don't choose to live a life like, and it's interesting because I'm a worrier and a planner, but it doesn't come up. And not out of neglect, but out of shifted priorities, maybe. And
Well, you know,
instead,
it's
I don't want to live a life worth dying. I want to live a life worth living.
You know, one of this, I was looking for this thing about the three truths of pain. I was going to ask you your take on them, but I can't find it. I'll try and remember it. But I've been having this struggle recently where, excuse me, well, that's a struggle right there.
I'm just glad that's not a Red Bull.
Yeah.
No, it's too early.
For all the folks at home, or you on the West Coast.
Yeah. It's way too early. No. So the struggle I have is I've been a week counter for a long time. Before I met Matt, I was counting weeks and counting weeks till I turned 80. Right. I always knew most of the men in my family never make it till 80. So I was like, yo, I wanted to make it to 80, and so I was counting weeks. And then I read something. I think I read it. I don't know where it came to me. But the guy was like, it just never occurred to me to die. He's like, I've been too busy fucking living, and it just never occurred to me to die. And it blew my mind because I was thinking about all the things and the fact that I have on my journal. It says, it's always later than you think.
Yeah. And I think it's a different take on like Matt's whole thing is like taking a marble out and putting it in that week is gone. I look forward to the day where his jar is empty and he's having to start to refill the jar because he miscounted, right? Like,
Yeah, exactly.
And I do appreciate the pressure from counting down, but I guess in a glass half full, half empty, I'm like, man, that's cool glass, right? I'm the contents aren't what bothers me as much as like, what did the whole thing look like? And and yeah, I want all the good and all the bad and all the in between. Like I want to experience all of it because without pain, I don't know pleasure, right? Without sadness, I don't know happiness. Without bad, I don't know good. And
Yeah.
it means so much more to win when you fucking lose. And so I think at the end of the day, like you call yourself an adventurer, and like I think the underlying thing to that is you're a competitor. And when you're a competitor in life, it makes sense to like count down because I'm competing against myself to this timeline I've made up, and I've made the decision to beat it, or I've made the decision to squeeze everything I can out of it.
Yeah.
And I love that. And I think that's an interesting way to approach it. And for me, it's like, what if I never worried about the marbles, and what if I just worried about the squeezing each day? And I get it. I like getting lost track in the process.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's what hit me when I heard that was I know that feeling too, right? You know that feeling of like getting lost in something that's so dope that you're like, oh shit, it's over.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so like when it hit me, I was like kind of torn, but I think where I've landed so far is like I like counting in the sense of it's a reminder to stop being lackadaisical and not intentional.
Totally. And
But
I think it's important, like, especially for as much as I will drive and push, I will procrastinate. And having some form of either friendships or countdown internally, I think you need both external and internal to
yeah,
drive. then
100%.
That helps keep me on that path so I can go get lost in something else. And the thing, time is a made up construct, right? And so when we talk about life, and it's like, I've already lived a lot more life than other people have had the chance to, and I've had some experiences at 30 that some people never have, and a lot of people get later in their life, right? And so I know more of myself in this chapter than I did exponentially, more than you can sum up than I did a decade ago. And I don't expect the next chapter, I don't know if that'll exponentially be greater 10 years from now. It could be in 2. But that's how life happens. We think that it's like success, right? And that pretty trajectory line. It's not. Life is not like that. It's a spiral that overlaps and comes back to the same succinct points at different levels, but laid on top of each other, and then sometimes stretched out like a slinky, and sometimes thrown out altogether, and sometimes tangled in a way we can't even see. So I'm here for all of it, but I think that constraints are safety nets or guardrails so that we make sure it keeps moving. It doesn't even have to move forward all the time, but it keeps moving. Because I think the thing that scares me most is probably stagnation.
So here's my final question to you. You get a billboard or even a postcard, and it gets mailed out to everybody. We'll say a postcard. It gets mailed out to every single person. All 100 million of them that you've chosen. What does it say?
For those who can't, we must.
There it is. I appreciate you. Thank you for showing up.
Yeah.
Thank you for being kind